Hi, this is Dave Hooper. The studio's closed today, so you're just getting an audio version of this. There's been an uptick in terms like brainwashing and mass delusion lately. Maybe you've noticed it. It seems like people are divided to the point at which they are claiming the other camp is brainwashed or deluded. So, let's talk about brainwashing and mass delusion for less than 10 minutes. Let's take the easy one first. Mass delusion. There is no such thing. If more than one person sees something, it is by definition not a delusion. It's something else. According to Wikipedia, brainwashing is also known as mind control, thought control, and a host of other slang terms. It's the concept that the human mind can be altered or controlled by certain psychological techniques. Brainwashing reduces its subject's ability to think critically or independently, to allow the introduction of new, unwanted thoughts and ideas into their minds, as well as to change their attitudes, values, and beliefs.
And the number one source for that indoctrination is our television sets.
And when brainwashing is at work, it's imperceptible to the brainwashed target.
Watching TV puts the viewers into a highly susceptible sleep-like hypnotic state, largely caused by the screen flicker that lowers the viewer's brainwaves into what is called an alpha state.
In order for brainwashing to work, you need a few ingredients. One, it's repetition, and lots of repetition. Listen to former Attorney General Eric Holder on his plans and strategy to abolish the Second Amendment. Ironically, the Attorney General of the USA is supposed to protect the Constitution, not subvert it.
One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
In this next example by Deadspin, I want you to notice how all mainstream media networks are reading off the exact same script. I consider it doubly ironic that the actual message you're about to hear is a plea from these mainstream media sources to trust them to deliver honest news and to not listen to any other source.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Every local news station, and if you didn't notice, it went across all networks. It didn't matter if it was Fox, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, all of them participated in this. This is not an accident. However, thanks to Deadspin, in a sense, they were caught. And when caught, the powers that be will typically admit it was a mistake, and they'll reassure the target audience it was a one-time event and will never happen again.
I don't understand reading that, just acting it out like they did. Those were seasoned journalists.
What about your first...
You are the front line of defense in terms of telling the truth. This was a disgrace across the board.
The FCC used to limit how many media outlets you could own to 25 outlets, literally, for the protection of our own country, to keep it from getting brainwashed. Those laws have been eroded slowly over time, and that is no longer against the law. Let's hear Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of an assassinated father, sounding the alarm.
There are 5 giant multinational corporations who control virtually all 14,000 radio stations in America, all 5,000 television stations, 80% of our newspapers, all of our billboards, and most of the large internet content providers. So there are 5 guys who are deciding.
But based on the last clip we just saw, it would seem that it's not 5 guys, it's actually 1 guy. And in a couple minutes, we're going to get a hint about who that 1 guy might be. So hang on. Often a special dialogue with unique terms are introduced so that the target audience can have their own conversations about the subject at hand, which further creates the impression of this intellectual conversation leading to the false sense of security of having common knowledge. As in, well, of course, we all know that's true, but we don't know why we know it. We just all know it's true. It is vital to keep the target audience from even looking at the counterpoint, which is usually done with ridicule, manufacturing social pressure. These days, we now have a mainstream media which actively participates in censorship. As I continue speaking, I'm going to flash all of the different censorships, restrictions, and disputes that either I or someone in my company have received just in the last 7 days. I I'm sure you've all run across this on social media as well. Some ideas are just not allowed to be discussed anymore. We simply don't have enough time to show you all the examples. And the odds of the video you're watching surviving on places like Facebook or YouTube are virtually zero. I fully expect this video to be taken down, even though it does not have a single piece of false information in it. And that's why our company, GenpopMedia, is expanding our operations to places like Parler, where there is no censorship and there is still free speech. We've produced documentary films and about 200 recorded radio and/or television shows. So we've been experiencing this to a certain degree for at least the last 4 or 5 years. However, in the last 6 months or so, the level of censorship has exponentially grown. It's got several people in our company, frankly, scared. That was the foundation of our country, and we actually have people applauding this, not understanding what it is they're applauding and what it is they're inviting. Eventually, the deterrent from even looking at other information will come down to physical force. History has shown that it always does. By getting many seemingly disconnected sources discussing the same things over and over and over, you're well on your way to brainwashing your target audience. This is where someone that's brainwashed can easily fool themselves, because they will seemingly hear the same story on 60 Minutes, Popular Mechanics, the New York Times, Time Magazine, CBS, NBC, as if everyone is talking about it. Hence, we reach that common knowledge threshold. That's a lot of control over your emotions based on someone else's word, which we know comes from at least 5 individual sources, and it seems comes from actually one source. Someone, one person, wrote that speech you heard, played across hundreds of affiliate local television stations. To be safe, let's make sure that Deadspin mashup wasn't a one-time aberration. Let's go back a little bit in history and see if this hasn't been going on longer than we realize.
In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny's step this year.
Now we're some health news. You know the old expression, don't worry, be happy?
Don't worry, be happy.
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 Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream.
You know the rest.
I scream,
You scream.
you know the rest.
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end of email overload?
Could this be the end?
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
We are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
And if you look at this ownership chart, you'll see that it's a half a dozen companies that really control everything you read, watch, and listen to. So don't fool yourself. Just because you see it on 60 Minutes, and then you read it in the New York Times, and then the Wall Street Journal, then your local paper, and then you run into friends later at the bar who read USA Today or watched NBC or CNN, and you're talking about the exact same thing and agreeing on it, you're really just talking to someone else who's also brainwashed. You are reaching a false sense of security of the information you have, when it's simply one person using many to manipulate millions. When the U.S. Constitution included a codicil to protect a free press, this is not what they had in mind. It's the opposite. It seems that we don't really have journalism anymore. We simply have people that are attractive and good readers. That is not what our Constitution was supposed to protect. That law existed for a reason. In our first mini documentary, number 1, we showed that brainwashing activities were at play as early as the 1950s and 1960s in the USA. So, is brainwashing at work only in the media? This one should send a shiver down your spine. Let's look to a speech from 2003 by the leaders of 2 separate nations as they were trying to gather support for waging war in Iraq. For some reason, Iraq was our target, yet they had nothing to do with 9/11. They're the leaders of Canada and Australia. This was almost 20 years ago.
Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must
The member for Grayndler.
It is inherently
dangerous to allow a country such as
Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons.
Now, when you think of that, really think about what you just heard. That alone is evidence that there's a consolidated power above the leaders of nations. In future episodes, we're going to shed some light on that one potential source. But we've learned a few things so far. It would seem this source is deceitful and is not just above the US media machine, but is above nations. Kind of like a deceiver of the whole world, if you will. Why does that term sound familiar?